Thursday, July 30th, 2020, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So is another Brazilian currency going to bite the dust? And why am I covering Brazil? Well, many of you probably know that I was born in Brazil. I grew up in Brazil up until I was around 18. Then I went to university abroad. My parents moved out of Brazil after that. So yeah, I grew up in Brazil, and it's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in money and inflation, because when I was growing up in Brazil, we had several different currencies. Why is that? Well, because we had a lot of inflation. At the time growing up, I didn't quite understand why there was inflation. Yeah, very few people, even my parents, they understood what was going on, but they didn't really know the underlying reason why. And that's why I've gone down this route of finding out what is really inflation, that inflation is really not greedy business people putting their prices up, but it is the creation of money and credit out of thin air by central banks and by governments colluding together to create fake money or fake credit. And yeah, why Brazil now? Well, they've had a currency, I think, since the mid-90s called the real, R-E-A-L, which has done relatively well. It's survived about a quarter of a century so far. So compared to the previous currencies, it did very well. I remember growing up, we had what was called the Cruzeiro. This was one Cruzeiro. And yeah, when I was about 12 or 11, you could get like a Coke with that, maybe something else. It was worth quite a bit, but of course, after a few years, it became worthless. This was a lot of money as well. 10 Cruzeiros. This is what I grew up with. If my mom gave me one of these, I was very happy. That was a lot of money. But eventually, we went from just having, I think the maximum was 10 or 20, I'm not sure. But eventually they were starting to make the 100. Is this the Cruzeiro one? Yeah, 100 Cruzeiros. You see, that was not, when I was growing up in the 70s, that wasn't around. You can see it's a little different. So they started increasing the denominations. And then from Cruzeiros, they went to Cruzados. And then they have had 1,000 Cruzados, as you can see here. And then things got so bad that they stamped it and they called it a Cruzado Novo, as you can see there. So it went from being 1,000 Cruzados to being one Cruzado Novo. So it was a nightmare. I think one of the worst years for inflation or hyperinflation in Brazil was 1990. So this is all relatively recent. So yeah, the new currency has done quite well. But I got a message about an hour ago from one of my viewers in Brazil, and he's actually from the same place that I was born and lived in, where I grew up. And it's Luis Claudio. As you can see here, he says, Monaco, yesterday, the Brazilian Central Bank just announced the creation of a new trash paper fake cash of 200 reals. So the biggest denomination until yesterday was 100. Now they've come out with a 200 denomination. It's going to start circulating from August. So he says the inflation is so damn high that the government is guiding the general public to the same way that Zimbabwe has done to the trillion paper note. And yet we still have free lunch and carnival, of course, lol. So I wanted to find out a little more about this. So I went to one of the newspapers in Brazil called the Folha de São Paulo, which is one of the major papers in São Paulo. It's not a paper I used to read that much. Back when I was growing up, my parents in Rio, we didn't get really the Sao Paulo papers, but this is quite mainstream. And I found a story about this new 200 real banknote. And it says, I'm going to read here and translate at the same time. The 200 real note is not a sign that inflation is going to come back. That's what they're saying. The mainstream, right? The mainstream seems to be in denial, not only here in the UK and in the US, but also in Brazil. So I'm reading here, it says, what changes with the new note? And the guy says almost nothing. But to me, what's really important that changes is the psychology. I think people are going to change their perception of the currency. Oh, and by the way, this one here is from the 60s, I think, because I was born in the 60s, but I don't remember too much from the 60s. I was born in 64. Don't really remember dealing too much with money when you're that small, but that's how different it was. So you can see we went from this, and then to this, to that, and then to that. Yeah, we have the real now. It has been relatively stable. So let's go through what this guy is saying. The launching of the new 200 real note caused sensation, surprising sensation. So he's surprised that people were surprised. He says that it's become a very big subject in social media. And it says the new note launched by the National Monetary Council, which will circulate from August, was reason for a lot of jokes and unwarranted worries. So it's just talking about the jokes they made about the new note, that they should have put a mongrel dog instead of I think they put, what did they put on the note? A wolf, right? So, and it also said, curiously, there was a lot of people saying that the launch of the 200 real note would bring in inflation, that it was a sign of inflation and even hyperinflation. So this article here is trying to basically say that these people are too worried about this. So it says here, inflation hasn't been that bad. It says it's been only 2.1%. And he's also saying that inflation fell, which is another fallacy. Inflation didn't fall. The rate of inflation fell. So the currency is still being inflated. And he talks about here how when the 100 real note was launched in 1994. So yeah, the new currency has been around since 1994, 26 years. That was the maximum, 100 real, until yesterday when they announced the new 200. He says the accumulated inflation is considerable, but pretty good compared to Brazilian standards in the past. And he says that 100 real in 1994, today you'd need 621. So I would say that's pretty bad. And he says the accumulated inflation of the last 26 years has been 521%. And I would say that's probably even worse. I would say the Brazilian government and statisticians are playing the same game as people play here in the UK and the US, underestimating the rate of inflation, I would say, or the debasement of the currency. So yeah, so he goes on to say then that there's nothing to worry about, that we don't have any inflation in Brazil, and that it's not going to be a problem. He says it's going to, if anything, is going to be good for corrupt politicians and for bandits, so they can carry more money and less weight around. So he made a bit of a joke out of that. So I personally think it's a bad sign for Brazil. And even though Brazilian interest rates are quite a bit higher than European or American standards, they have gone down a lot. And Brazil doesn't have a hard currency. And not that we have a hard currency here or in the US. It's just that the people that run the world, the major central banks, Brazil is not part of the club, right? So it's a lot harder for Brazil to keep up. But one thing I would say to my viewer in Brazil is that he's right. You guys have to worry about inflation in Brazil, and it's going to get a lot worse. So you just have to look at the chart of gold in Brazilian reais here. It's above 10,000 as we speak here, right near the all-time highs. It was, let's see, up until beginning of 2018, it was around 4,000. So that's not good. That chart here is saying that you're gonna get a lot of inflation, a lot of price rises in Brazil, and I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with a 500 real note maybe before the end of the year or maybe early next year. So there you go. At least Brazil, it looks like it's not really going cashless yet. At least they still have their banknotes, but it might not be a great sign. So there you go. Another Brazilian currency. Will it bite the dust? Probably very likely. That's what history tells us about Brazil. Different currencies very often, unfortunately. And to my Brazilian viewers, yeah, a lot of Brazilians hold dollars because dollars do relatively well versus the real. But I would say they should try to hold the ultimate form of protection, gold and silver, if they can. There you go. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.